Lenovo announces that it will certify its ThinkStation PCs and ThinkPad P series laptops for both Ubuntu LTS and Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
But moving to Linux doesn't cost you anything, makes you safer, and allows you to use even old computers. Win, win, win.
Lenovo is already well represented within the Linux hardware community, having certified a swath of its devices for various different distros over the years.
Bill Gates is reportedly seething behind the scenes as the global PC market witnesses a dramatic shakeup. Lenovo, the world's largest computer manufacturer, has decided to ditch Windows as the default system on millions of its laptops, replacing it with Linux. The decision breaks a three-decade tradition that made Windows the automatic choice on nearly every non-Apple computer sold worldwide. For the first time in modern PC history, Windows is being pushed out of its long-held throne and repositioned as an optional paid upgrade rather than the built-in standard. Industry insiders say Lenovo's motivation is surprisingly simple. Linux is cheaper, easier to manage, and ultimately more profitable for the companies building the machines. The shift is now sparking intense conversation across the tech world, exposing just how expensive Windows has become for the manufacturers who actually produce the computers.
And the company recently revealed plans to sell laptops preloaded with Fedora and make more firmware updates available through the vendor-neutral Linux vendor firmware service. But now it's going even further with the Linux Love. Lenovo says all of its ThinkStation and ThinkPad P series laptops will be available to buy with Ubuntu.
The moment that stunned the industry reportedly came in November 2024, when Lenovo CEO Yang Yuanqing revealed a strategy that few expected from such a dominant player. Beginning in the second quarter of 2025, Linux will come pre-installed on about 60% of Lenovo's consumer laptops. Windows isn't disappearing entirely, but the power dynamic has flipped. Customers who still want Microsoft's operating system will now have to request it specifically and pay extra for the privilege. After decades of being the default environment for nearly every PC user, Windows is suddenly being treated like a premium add-on. For many observers, this announcement wasn't just a product update, it felt more like Lenovo throwing down the gauntlet in a battle that could reshape the entire PC ecosystem.
Some of you have machines that are running perfectly fine but are suddenly labeled as machina non grata by Microsoft because it does not have a TPM security chip. So they want to consider it e-waste now. You cannot upgrade these to Windows 11. In the meantime, if your machine allows it, once you move to Windows 11, the Copilot features are now activated and suddenly you have a very invasive spy machine that records every action you take on the computer.
To understand why Lenovo would risk such a massive industry disruption, you have to look at the financial reality of building laptops in 2025. Most consumers assume that the companies assembling these machines are making huge profits, but the truth is far less glamorous. Budget laptops, the $400 to $500 models that dominate global sales, operate on extremely thin margins. Over time, manufacturers say Microsoft has steadily chipped away at those margins while leaving PC makers responsible for nearly every operational headache tied to the software. Lenovo's internal calculations reportedly revealed a number that raised eyebrows across the industry. On average, the company says it loses about $47 per laptop dealing specifically with Windows-related complications. And that figure doesn't even include the licensing fee itself.
Planning to treat Linux like a first-class citizen.
The licensing fee alone already eats into profits before a single device even reaches store shelves. Microsoft typically charges manufacturers somewhere between $50 and $80 per Windows license depending on the production scale and agreement terms. On a $400 laptop, that immediately wipes out a huge portion of the available margin. But the real financial pressure doesn't stop there. Windows 11 introduced a series of hardware requirements that raised manufacturing costs across the board. Mandatory TPM 2.0 security chips added a few extra dollars per machine, while processor restrictions ruled out many lower-cost CPUs that would otherwise work perfectly for everyday tasks. The operating system's heavier memory demands also forced manufacturers to move from 4 GB to at least 8 GB of RAM, pushing memory costs even higher. Microsoft wrote the requirements, but companies like Lenovo were the ones paying for them.
What's more, Lenovo will also upstream device drivers directly to the Linux kernel to help maintain stability and compatibility throughout the life of the workstation. So what that means is now all of the ThinkStations, all of the ThinkPad P series laptops, you're going to be able to have pretty solid compatibility with any Linux distribution that you choose to use on those machines.
Then there's the controversial world of pre-installed software, a practice that has long frustrated both manufacturers and customers. Microsoft requires PC makers to load trial programs and promotional apps onto new machines before they even reach the buyer. Antivirus trials, Microsoft 365 prompts, and various promotional tools greet users the moment they power on their laptops. What makes the situation even more controversial is the revenue structure behind it. Software companies reportedly pay Microsoft for the placement of those trial offers, yet manufacturers like Lenovo receive none of that money. When frustrated customers call support about intrusive pop-ups or subscriptions they accidentally activated, those complaints are directed at the laptop manufacturer. Microsoft collects the revenue, while Lenovo deals with the backlash.
One of the distinguishing features about Linux is that the operating system and most of the apps you use for normal day-to-day computing are all free. So this is the first fear to eliminate. It does not cost you anything to make a move. In fact, you can even test your computer first before you make a permanent move, so there's even less risk. And not only is Linux free, but it's open source.
Perhaps the most damaging cost comes from product returns. According to Lenovo's internal figures, roughly 11.4% of Windows 11 laptops sold between October 2021 and June 2024 were returned within the first month. That means nearly 1 out of every 8 machines ended up back in the company's hands. Customers frequently cited slow performance, disruptive updates, broken features, or settings they couldn't disable. The frustrating part for Lenovo was that the hardware itself usually worked perfectly. The dissatisfaction stemmed largely from the software experience. Each return cost the company around $75 once processing, restocking, and resale discounts were factored in. When those numbers are multiplied across millions of devices, the losses become staggering and, according to Lenovo's perspective, it's the manufacturers who carry the financial burden while Microsoft walks away untouched.
Mark says the Linux program at Lenovo is very much alive. Last year was crazy/exhausting/frustrating/exciting and was a big learning curve, particularly with regards to our internal process and the steps between certifying a platform and actually getting it out to market.